One.
Welcome back to the landing strip on yet another Winnipeg Jets win night. After tonight, the Winnipeg Jets become the sixth team in NHL history to record 12 wins in their first 13 games. And this wild ride continues to develop in the most fun fashion. As Turd Ferguson says over on YouTube, we are now live on YouTube and Twitch for those listeners looking to take part during the live shows. I see Turd Ferguson has jumped over to YouTube and he says, Nick, we're one sleepy, shitty period away from being 13-0. This is ridiculous. And honestly, hard not to feel that way. I mean, Mikey, how are you feeling tonight? Let's send it over to you because I'm at a loss for words when it comes to this Winnipeg Jets team right now.
You know, anytime I start to think that there's going to be a lull coming in, we're going to see it soon, they come out and they just play a clean game like tonight. This team is, I don't know if they're going to stop winning. Jacob Eels in the chat says they feel like they're going to keep rolling all the way through American Thanksgiving like this. And honestly, I don't know how to argue against that right now. They're just kicking ass. It's great. And on it,
go for it.
Oh, I was just going to say, before we get too far into the game, I think we need to give the people what they want after a win.
Hey, it's time to get the vibes going on this show. It's time to feel good about the Winnipeg Jets and their winning ways. Make sure to hit it, Mikey. God, it feels good every time that we get to enjoy the saxophone squirtle. I'm glad we're keeping that lore going. I'm glad to see the chat so fired up about it and asking for it every game. This is what it's about, right? We're building a community here. We're having some fun with it. And the Winnipeg Jets are doing their part to provide in the fun. I'm seeing it in the chat. Just a clean hockey game from the Winnipeg Jets tonight. I didn't feel like there was much given up against when it came to the Jets. We were kind of talking about how the Tampa game 2 nights ago was an interesting matchup where I felt that the Jets were giving up the neutral zone quite easily, and it was leading Tampa to create some offense. I didn't even see that out of Utah today. Utah does have some skilled, speedy players, and outside Keller, I don't know if any of them really showed up on this night. He was the only guy that really stood out for me.
Krause was pretty all right.
That's fair. That's fair. And you know what feels good about beating this Utah team? Obviously, this is the first time that the Winnipeg Jets are facing Utah in its current iteration. Welcomed them into town with a nice 3-0 win. But it was finally beating Vejmelka. I mean, that guy I didn't even want to bet on this game going in after some of the history with Vejmelka against the Winnipeg Jets. Get to him twice.
Yep.
Connor Hellebuyck gets the shutout. Not his most difficult, but there were some big saves in there, and there was that play in the second where he calms the waters coming out of his crease to catch that puck. I thought he looked like he was locked in despite not facing a whole lot in this one. The penalty kill goes 4 for 4 on a night that I thought they were a really strong as a group. There wasn't too much seam passes given up. There wasn't too much quality given up on that power play. I thought they really picked their spots when to jump and get clears as well. So 4 for 4 there. We've talked all year about the power play, and let's not forget about them as they chip in on a 1 for 2 night. The first unit was out there for a $1.55, but it was all worth it when Gabe Velarde tips that blast from Josh Morrissey. And then Nino Niederreiter, El Nino, gets his 6th and 7th of the year in the third period in his 900th game. What a career for Nino Niederreiter. We'll talk a little bit about that. The pass from Mason Appleton to set up that goal to go up 2-0 and really put this one away was exactly what you want to see. That was a play that was at my end of the rink. And it was one of those plays you can see developing where you're just like, okay, if this pass happens, Nino's gone, and it all worked out there. Just a lot of good, man. A lot of good in Winnipeg right now, and it's been great to see.
Yeah, this is one of those games where it was just a clean game top to bottom. All four lines were out there contributing and pulling in the same direction. It was just kind of nice to watch. It was almost calming to watch. They never felt like they were in danger at any point in the game. Yeah, I don't really know what else to say besides they were fantastic again tonight.
Yeah, let's you know what? Let's get right into it. Let's open up those phone lines. Let's start diving into the chat and see where the crowd wants to go with this one as we talk about. Actually, Mikey, you wanna do a little research? I'm curious. What happened with the first 5 teams to win 12 of their first 13 games? How far did they go? What did their seasons look like? I don't know if that'll be easy to pull up if you want to take a peek at that.
Let me pull that
That
up
is
while I
something
open the phones. One sec. Absolutely.
Sounds good. Let's dive into some of the comments here as I'm going to try and pull double duty on TikTok and YouTube. So bear with me, folks. Max is silent. First comment I see: Logan Cooley looks like a player, and I do think that Utah team right now they look very. You could see the skill elements of their game, but they're kind of. I feel like they're kind of where the Jets were at pre-bonus, where they have the upside, they have the talent, but I feel like they don't have the structure yet. And I thought a game like that, you saw them overpassing at times. You saw them overcommitting to some things, but they do have some exciting talent coming up, and I do think Utah is going to make some waves in the Central Division sooner rather than later.
Yeah. The fact that they've been able to put games together up to this point in the way that they have has been really impressive. They've got some real nice speed. They've got a little bit of size. They've had some unfortunate injuries as well, right? So, yeah, it's a good club. We're going to see them a bunch more times throughout the year here. So I think they're going to be fun games, especially when the Jets go down to Salt Lake City for the first time. That'll be interesting to see.
For sure. I like this point from Turd Ferguson too. In on the YouTube side of the comments, the fact that Jets didn't get frustrated and cheat for offense, we are bought in. Let's go. It's funny because I did kind of feel like 55 was early, but I think that sums up a really good aspect that this team has rid themselves of from years past. This is a team that seems to really trust their system, really buy into it, and really just play it out throughout the course of a game. They didn't wander back too much into the soft outer zone plays as much as years past.
Yep.
What did you think of that side of the conversation there, Mikey?
Yeah, they were working in the areas that you wanted to see them. They weren't floating off to the soft areas on the outside. We've seen some of the shot maps not be all that flattering in a couple of the games, right? Yeah, they were getting into those hard spots and they were winning their battles there. I thought it was especially Niederreiter tonight, who again we're going to get into, but yeah, I thought he particularly was looking good there.
Yeah, no, for sure. D Labs points out I was giving Vemelka some credit. He says he's now 1-9 against the Winnipeg Jets, and if that's true, all I could say is I remember that one game very loud and clear. Me and my brothers took my dad to his first Jets game since 2.0 came, and I remember very vividly sitting there for a 32 save shutout. I don't even think Phoenix that game or Arizona got to 20 shots, and if I remember correct, the Jets power play got booed out of that period in the third after going 0 for 3 in the penalty. So that I might be leaning too much on that memory. I just remember Vizmelka in that one, and it's haunted me to this day.
That's fair. I remember that one as well. That one hurts still.
Blame the hacks. Vizmelka seems to have the Jets number over the years. They seem to struggle to get by on him, but have seemed to get it done. And yeah, maybe that's just it. We're remembering those feelings a little bit. We're remembering some of those games, and I thought he was pretty solid in this one. I mean, the power play goal comes on a tip. The Nino goal comes on a partial breakaway. So I did feel like he was pretty strong there. Scott Westman asks, why is Utah's attendance worse than the Jets? Winnipeg always getting the wrong end of the stick when it comes to narrative-wise. And that is an interesting conversation. Obviously, we know in Winnipeg that the attendance conversation's picking up again as the last two games
Yep.
did not touch 13,000. But I do kind of agree with Scott here. And we know Winnipeg being the smallest market will always be under that microscope. But at the same time, San Jose and Utah aren't drawing nearly the same numbers, so it is something to consider.
So it looks like in the cap era, there's only two of the teams that are in that list.
Okay,
The
who are they?
2013 Chicago Blackhawks, 2012-2013 Chicago Blackhawks, and the 2022-2023 Boston Bruins.
Good company.
Good company to be in. Yep.
2012, 2013. Was that a cup year for the Hawks, or was that a middle year?
No, that was in between. They got out the
No, 2012, 2013. They won the cup in 6 games over the Bruins.
Oh, there you go. Right on.
And what was the other team?
The Bruins from 2 years ago, 22-23 Bruins.
And that team was a load. I know they didn't end up getting a cup, but that team was a load all year.
Yep.
Great company to be in when it comes to winning your 12 of your first 13 games. I mean, one of my group chats was buzzing. This team's already got 24 points in the standings.
Yep.
Realistically, 94 is going to get you a wild card spot, likely 94, 95, 96. So you go 500 the rest of the way. You're touching that number. I expect this team and this talent to do a lot better than 500. This starts just giving you such a bigger, I guess, runway to keep pushing forward, to keep taking steps forward in their game and some of the stuff we talked about. This is just an insane run right now.
Well, and I think the other part of it too is that the more that they go on this run, the more points they bank, the better they look league-wide. You're going to have players come deadline time who maybe would have had the Winnipeg Jets on their no-trade list. Maybe now look at it and go, hey, can I go there and win a cup this year? And maybe not have, maybe the Jets aren't going to be on that, or they'll be willing to wave them off, right? I think that's something that could be interesting come deadline time.
Yeah, it definitely could be. That is now going to be back-to-back seasons where you're putting up those kind of results over the regular season as well. And it does seem, and I'm not one to necessarily buy press clippings a little too much, but seeing some of the quotes we're seeing out of key guys, like I thought Kyle Connor had a really great quote today. Was it today or yesterday? Just about how much buy-in, and they realize that these early season results don't mean as much as come playoff team, and they're really bought into what Scott Arniel is telling them, and it sounds like Scott Arniel behind the scenes is really keeping his finger on that pulse.
Yep.
So I think you raise a great point that when you put up runs like this, when you're the talk of the league, which the Winnipeg Jets should be after a 12-1-0 start, that kind of stuff sticks in people's heads. So I'm right there with you. I think that's a very big aspect to this entire conversation. And hey, let's just keep this thing rolling.
Yeah, absolutely. This is it's a fun ride that we're on right now. So the vibes are high. And coming from our chat here, Jetcentric says they would like to publicly apologize to Scott Arniel. I think they've come around now. Thank you.
Me and Jetcentric always go back and forth on new coaching hires. And yeah,
I want to say, and that's I'm echoing those thoughts because I'd also need to publicly apologize because I was down on the hiring, like I mentioned before. So yeah, I'm with you on that one, Jetcentric.
I'm typically let's see where things go with coaches, but I tend to lean on past organizational problems. But I'm not taking any apologies or any victory laps or any losses 13 games into a 82-game season plus playoffs. We're still so early in this thing, fellas. We are still so early in this. But I respect the ability to put yourself out there and admit you're wrong at times. Like I think that's a great quality. I think when we're talking big picture in sport, let's let this whole thing play out. Let's see where this goes.
Absolutely, yep. I will point
But
out there is one downside to the game tonight that Jacob Beals in the chat points out. The only downside, Connor point streak came to an end. He had a great game. He played ridiculously well. Just didn't get on the box score tonight.
and here's an aspect. Obviously, we talked a lot early on. Despite the two skill groups scoring goals, we weren't. I wasn't high on the games you were getting out of that group, and didn't feel like you could win over the course of time playing at that level. Despite neither of them scoring at 5-on-5 today, I thought both the Nemestikov line and the Shifley line had strong games where they were creating more than they were giving up. They were spending more time in the O zone than D zone. And that's the kind of games you want to see. The goals are going to come for guys like that when they have their chances. And obviously, Kyle Connor was on this scorcher. 19 points through his first 12 games, 9 goals, 10 assists.
Yep.
All that stuff's going to come to an end, but you want to see efforts like this despite that. And I thought this was another step forward for the Winnipeg Jets top line and for the Nemestikov, Perfetti, Ehlers line, though I think it's become quite obvious that they will need an offensive player between Ehlers and Perfetti at some point. I think the fall-offs become pretty real with Vladdy on the offensive side.
Yep, totally agree. They're going to need that extra punch up front if they're going to make noise in the playoffs. It has to happen at that point. And we know it. The team knows it. They're going to be looking, getting close to the deadline. So, blame the hacks. In the chat brings it up. They say, is Nemestikov really the only spot pending Heinola's return? The Jets will look at the trade deadline because you can bring up Lambert and Chibi for the fourth.
Oh, they're going to be bringing in a D-man too, and they need to. They need to. I see Fat Tony's not too happy with me, so I got to address that.
Yep.
For the listening audience, Fat Tony 202, Nick, I won't judge 12 games. Also, Nick, 5 games of playoff hockey matters. What the fuck is it, Nick? Hey, probably a fair criticism, but I think most fans and everybody really takes, a playoffs results a little harder, and I think it depends what that series looks like. If it looks like the Colorado series did last year, I think you should rightly have your doubts on a team. If it was a 6-7 game competitive series, I think that's a totally different thing. I think what it looks like at that time does matter quite a bit.
Yeah, totally agree.
But this team continues to show that they are a very good squad and are giving everybody reasons to believe that they could take steps come playoff time. I do believe that as well.
They're beating the teams they should beat. They're hanging in with the teams that are supposed to be better than them. They're winning ugly games. They can win clean games like they did tonight. It's an interesting group.
It definitely is, and it's I've talked. It's almost a broken record at this point, but if you're looking at why I think this team could take another step in the playoffs based on what we've seen early, the power play now becoming an actual weapon rather than a drag is going to add offense come playoff time. You have the elite goaltending. You're still a very good defensive team.
Yep. And
the forward groups are all starting to perform right now. I do think I see the real Stephen Howe asks, what changes do you think we can make to the Jets at 5-on-5 to be more successful in the opponent's zone? And I continue to be someone that believes making the Ehlers-Connor switch would benefit both. And also for that kind of thing, we do need to get a center upgrade on Nemestikov, who I think is a much better bottom 6 winger than a top 6 center, so to speak.
Yep, completely agree. You get a replacement for him on that second line. He can drop down and play on the fourth with Kupari. Then you've got 2 guys who are, realistically centers on that fourth line. So you're not worried about face-offs. It doesn't matter what end of the ice, what hand they're taking it on. You got a guy for each spot. The trickle down or domino effect of bringing in that replacement up top is going to be really nice to a group that's already real strong.
For sure. And we know the depth on this team is what makes them so successful. So if you can get an even bigger boost at the top and still have this this much quality depth, if you look at just the point scorers in the third period to put this game to bed, Nino, Appleton, Lowry continues to be that line. And then Sandberg chips in on the empty net with Lowry and Nino. I mean, that group continues to really push their envelope. And I saw Murat on the old Twitter machine is jumping on the Adam Lowry has a better or a more interesting case for Team Canada than Mark Scheifele. I thought that was interesting tonight.
So he's joining the resistance is what I'm hearing. Excellent.
The resistance, eh? Could be. Turd Ferguson over on YouTube talking about the idea of upping the forward group, thinks Brock Nelson might be that guy. And the Islanders continue to be an interesting team when we're talking about trade addition, but
yeah, I think that'd be a real nice fit with the Jets. Absolutely.
Here's one for you. And I mean, this is a little bit for Fat Tony 202, but Phyllis is also not too thrilled with Phyllis says in the YouTube chat, you don't get to the playoffs without a good regular season. Good grief, people. And that is very true as well. Here's one for you. 12-1-0. When do we start thinking about a President's Cup trophy type of run?
25% of the way through the season, I'd say at the 1/4 mark, if they're still pacing well above the teams. Because who's the next closest team to them in the standings right now?
It would be, I think, last time I checked it was Florida, but that was a couple days ago. Right now, it is, if you just go by points.
Yeah.
Oh, that's Eastern. Yeah, Florida and LA at 19
same amount
points
of games
each.
played and are 5 points back.
Mm-hmm.
And same amount of games played. So yeah, if we're there at the 20 game ish mark, 21 game mark, and the Jets are still at a much higher points percentage at the next closest team, because a 923 to a 731. You got Carolina at 818. Yeah, if they're still pacing there at 21 games, I'll say we can start talking about it.
Yeah, and some of the things that are nice to see, they're 12 goals up in goal differential on the Rangers, who are second. Yep. Continue to get it done there. Perfect record on the road has been quite interesting too, 6-0-0. Though
and crushing the Rangers, the next closest for goal differential.
Yeah, so there's a lot of good things here. We've seen
20,
multiple.
Yeah, if they're still like just saucing teams at that rate, 20-ish games in, yeah.
Choices TK asks, was Bonus holding this team back, instilling a new culture and structure, but was too rigid offensively? And then it ties into a question here from the real Stephen Howe. More or less an open-ended question. How do we feel about Scott Arniel doing this season, and how do we think the team has adjusted to the change in the locker room and the bench? I think these are two questions that relate to the same topic, so let's dive into them. I was obviously very vocal towards the end of last year that I felt Rick Bonus's lineup decisions were holding the Winnipeg Jets. We had kind of talked about on the last post-game show. I feel that Rick Bonus does leave a good legacy in Winnipeg, fixing the culture, stripping Wheeler of the Sea, bringing this defensive system into place, and Josh Morrissey's breakout, I think all belong to Rick Bonus. That being said, I do think, and my biggest thing last year is when you're a team that maybe has a little bit less top-end talent than the teams you're seeing in the playoffs, those lineup decisions do matter more for this core than a team with, say, Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl, who could just will their way to wins. And that brings me to Scott Arniel. I think he continues to push all the right buttons, continues to push. Obviously, the coaching staff gets a ton of credit for the specialty teams. That's the biggest difference from last year to this year. But even his in-game feel, I like some of the adjustments he makes pending on game situation. I've been really happy with the work Scott Arniel has done. So I do think there is credit for him and how he's handling this room, how he's handling the bench, how he's taken Bonus's structure and built off that through the first 13 games. I think the Scott Arniel praise is well-deserved at this point of the year.
Yeah, completely agree. And I was, like I said, somebody who was down on the hiring initially. I wasn't thrilled about how his first run through the NHL as a head coach went, and wasn't sure that he had, had gone and changed all that much, but so far he's completely showing us that he has, and the lineup decisions have been great. He's found that balance of having the team, giving them what they want in terms of, who they're playing with, and also trying to find the pieces that work to still get the results. So yeah, he's doing great.
Oh, 100%. And I got an interesting question for you on coming from the chat here. Mark or Mike. Yeah, Mike F1010, sorry, trying to read off two screens is a bit trouble. President's Trophy would be a massive all-time achievement for the city and the org. I'd take a President's Trophy over a round 3 loss. I'll say that. What is your thoughts on President's Trophy success versus playoff success? And would you take a President's Trophy over a round 3 loss? Go.
Is it a cop-out if I say I'm taking both? Like, there's no reason that it has to be one or the other. There's no... I'm going to echo Max the Silent in the chat and say curses aren't real. I'm not doing it. I'm not buying it. There is no President's Trophy curse. If you're good enough to win that trophy, I say you go out there and then you go and win those 3 rounds anyways. If I have to pick one or the other, yeah, I'm taking the President's Trophy because that's that's a bit more of a... It's something that gets remembered more in the annals of hockey history, as opposed to just teams that went out in a Western Conference final, right? So if you have to pick one, yeah, I'm probably taking the trophy, but nah, screw it. I think you can get both, and this team's good enough.
So I'm going to dive into my thoughts, but I want to welcome Frosty Winnipeg to the YouTube chat. He or she says, Phyllis invited me to this chat. First time visitor, and we're glad to have you, Frosty.
Welcome
Make sure
in. Thank you.
Yeah, make sure you share us around as we go live after every single game. And we have a weekly podcast that drops Monday. So nice to see you here. On the President's Trophy thoughts, I actually echo a lot of what Mike F is talking about here. I think a President's Trophy would be massive all-time achievement for this city and org. It might be, and this might not be popular. I know I'm not a big CFL guy. I would say a President's Trophy in Winnipeg might be the biggest sporting accomplishment in the last... Obviously, historically, there's been Winnipeg teams that have had the cup and everything like that. If you look at the last few decades, I think a President's Trophy is that meaningful. You're the smallest market in the NHL, and you went 82 games as the number 1 team in the NHL. I think that's a huge, huge accomplishment, even without playoff success. I really do feel that way about winning a President's Trophy.
I agree with you. I think that's going to piss off a lot of Bomber fans. And if there are any of those Bomber fans listening right now, give us a call, 1-204-800-0409, and let us know if you think a President's Trophy from the Winnipeg Jets would be bigger than the Bombers winning the Grey Cup the last few years. And also the Gold-Eyes slander is terrible here. Come on.
Yeah, sorry. We need an affiliated ball team here.
We do.
Choices TK on this topic says just win every game you can and the chips fall as they may. And hey,
yep.
If those chips are falling on the good side of things more often than the bad side over 82, I think that's a great accomplishment.
Agreed. Yeah, Max the Silent agrees with it as well. It would easily be the largest pro sports accomplishment. Yeah, I think it would be as well. Like you said, smallest market in the NHL. To do that, it's like when the Green Bay Packers win the Super Bowl, smallest. It's really impressive and incredible.
And Scott Westman in the YouTube chat, Phyllis had said, historically, our biggest win was the 4-game sweep of the Oilers. And Scott Westman says Nashville. For me, that Nashville series is the high point for the Winnipeg Jets 2.0, personally. I remember winning that series and feeling like the Stanley Cup Finals was right around the corner. Yep. That run, that team... I'm still not convinced that we see a roster quite that good. That team was something else.
I saw a conversation happening on Twitter the other day about this, where people were arguing on which team is the better squad if you put this Winnipeg Jets group up against that 2017 Western Conference Final team. Where do you fall on that debate on a quick thought?
This team versus that team?
Yep, this team versus that team.
The same spot I sat in all of these debates last year in December. Yep. I'm taking the 17-18 team by a mile at this stage. A mile.
Yep, totally agree still. I was just curious.
No, that team for me was special, and this team could get there, and this team could go on a run like that with a couple ads at the deadline.
Yep.
I have a lot of trouble comparing, especially 13 games in, anything to that team. That team from game 21 on was the best team in the NHL by a
so
mile.
good.
A mile
They're
might be a
so
stretch,
good.
but that team was the best team in a competitive year.
Yeah.
I have trouble with that one. I do have trouble with that one.
Max, the silent, thinks it's pretty funny. He goes, let's see, Vlad versus Statsny. Tough call.
Say that one more time.
Vlad Nemestikov at 2C versus Paul Statsny at 2C. It's a tough call. I don't know who's better.
That, and I mean, the top
defense,
four on that team was just unbelievable. It's hard to imagine getting back to that level of a top four decor. But I do love that point.
I mean,
from Max
Mackenzie
Silent.
Weegar will go a long way when he's in blue, so it'll be okay.
I sure hope so. Here's one for you. Is Ghost 8 in the chat? How did his boy Rasmus Kupari not bury that one sitting right in the slot?
Yeah. He's had a couple opportunities like that this year now where, clear space like that and just couldn't bury it.
And it started with him with a high tip in the neutral zone to really game the zone. It was a great shift on his part. I just couldn't believe he doesn't bury that one.
Yep. Yeah, a little bit gun shy, but if he was able to bury those chances, he probably would be playing beyond the fourth line. So it is what it is. Sure. The fact that he's in the position to get those chances, I'm happy about, and they'll come when they'll come in eventually.
You're.
Go ahead.
I had nothing. Go for it.
Oh, JPix29 in the chat has a question. When should we expect a Lambert call-up? Anytime soon, ? And we've touched on it before in chat, but we're thinking probably not until, maybe sometime in December when they've got a softer home schedule or into January. But there's no super big need. Again, injuries change everything, right? But at the moment, I don't think it'll be anytime super soon. How about you?
No, yeah, I continue to look later into the year, December, January type of idea, unless an injury pops up.
Yeah,
that would be my guess, especially right now. They're 12-1-0. Don't really need to give that jolt. My kind of thought is he's going to come out with either an injury to a guy like Vlad, or if they go on a bit of a losing streak or things get kind of tough and they want to give themselves an internal boost. Yeah. I think that's kind of the method I see them incorporating a Brad Lambert. Frosty Winnipeg asks, is Iafallo on the clock the most invisible Jet this year? ? Let's start with you, Mikey.
Yes, I think for more than a couple of reasons. One, he's been fairly quiet, right, on that fourth line. Hasn't produced a whole bunch in terms of offensive points. The other part too is just the salary. They need to dump that salary if they can at some point to clear up for an ad that's going to help them higher up in the lineup. So yeah, in my opinion, absolutely Frosty. Iafallo is definitely on the clock. I would guess his time in Winnipeg isn't going to be too much longer than the trade deadline. But yeah, how about you, Nick?
So I've liked what we've got. Well, I would like, obviously, if you could, a little more out of it, but I've liked where that fourth line is at as far as what they have going for them stylistically right now. Though I think Frosty is definitely onto something here when it comes to Alex Iafallo. We had talked about it before the season at $4 million being a fourth liner. I feel like it is money that's kind of being burnt right now. So if you go to make a big ad, I think that is the probably the contract in Winnipeg that you could move off of. I think he's been solid but not sexy in his game. I mean, I think he does pretty well as a puck stopper defensively. It's just he's a defensive fourth line winger getting paid $4 million, which is quite expensive on the cap when you're trying to maximize a roster.
Yep.
So I think he's a good pro. I think he's a really solid depth NHLer. But I also totally get the concern about him being quiet, especially when you start looking at the money at that point. I think the Winnipeg Jets are going to look to add on to their talent base rather than subtract to it. So I think he'll be here till free agency unless something big comes down the pike is where my thoughts would land there.
Oh, interesting. You don't think they'll try to package him out in some way to make room at the deadline?
If they need the cap to do something big, I could see it. I do think it's more likely though that they're in a pretty good cap position come deadline. Once this IR clears up, they start banking some money, and I think they'll look to be as deep as an org as possible when it comes to the playoffs.
Yep.
And I think he'll be involved in that. I mean, he's still going to be. I don't even know if he'd be the first forward I'd pull out right now, if I'm being honest. I think
I was
the
just
winger
going to
on
ask. So if Vlad gets replaced at 2C by some miracle, tomorrow, and that fourth line spot now is where he would go, who are you taking out? Is it Morgan Barron? Is it Rasmus Kupari? Or is it Alex Iafallo?
I think it. I think it would be Kupari, but I wouldn't be opposed to Barron. I mean, he's I think I like how Jarrett, my brother, described him at the game the other night, where I think Morgan Barron's been like fine. Like he does his job, he goes to work, keeps it simple. He's not really costing you. But as my brother put it, he in his mind is the most boring player in the NHL. And when you're looking for ads, I think he'll still be here. But if say a Morgan Barron or a Rasmus Kupari or an Alex Iafallo becomes your 13 forward after the deadline, I think that's a good spot to be in come playoffs as the grind goes, as like you're adjusting to a series. Maybe you want something a little different from that fourth line. I don't see the rush to move off of them in season unless you need that cap space to go hunting for something bigger.
Interesting. All right, there you go. We'll have to keep an eye on that and see where that goes. The Twitch chat for the most part agrees with you that Kupari would be the one to come out. Except for, of course, our good friend Zero Ghost 8, who was quite upset.
It does not love to hear that.
Does not love.
It is interesting though. I do think, though, when it comes to Vlad moving down, maybe that would play in a bit more. But I do think Arneal really does like Kupari, so I do think that comes into play. Obviously, the speed's been there. Took a penalty today. It's just one of those. I don't know. He's not a guy I'd be really. Though. Yeah, it's not someone I'm really worried about if he's coming out of the lineup.
Yeah, if the worst thing we're trying to figure out is Rasmus Kupari or Morgan Barron, I think that means the Jets are in a great spot either way. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. Toronto Sports Network 243. I like your podcast, which thank you. I appreciate that. But you conflict with a legal curve. I can't watch the post game shows live. Smashing the like. So we appreciate you popping by.
Thank you very much.
Smash the like and supporting the content space in Winnipeg. Thanks for stopping by, Toronto Sports Network. Appreciate the kind words. Sil says only one that would make sense to be IFL to create cap space. I might have missed something there. Good to see you. What's up, Nick? Good to see you. Sil's in the chat.
I think Sil's just talking about who would be the person to come out, and they would think Iafallo right off the roster, I'm assuming, to help create some more cap space, which is kind of what I was thinking as well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see which route the Jets take with that.
It really depends on where their cap is come the deadline. Like
Injuries
if they're somewhere in like
that.
Yeah, if they're in like the 3 or 4. Yeah, if you're in the IR and you don't have as much cap, I think it becomes more likely that a guy like that moves off for an upgrade.
Yep.
But if you are able to bank, say, $6 million plus, I do think it's a little more unlikely to see that move for this org in the middle of the year. It's kind of where I'm at.
No, makes sense.
Appreciate you, Turd Ferguson, for giving Toronto Sports Network shit for picking the wrong pod after the game. I love that.
Right on. Thanks, Turd. I agree.
What'd you think of the refs tonight? I thought this was an interesting game for the old Stripes.
Tell me about it.
If I'm both teams, I'm probably upset with the refs in this one.
Okay.
I felt like almost all those calls were really, really soft calls on the hooks and the trips for the NHL.
Yeah.
And then I thought they just missed some like really obvious shit. So like I think both teams and being there and kind of seeing how they were interacting with refs between whistles and whatnot, I think both teams were getting frustrated. And honestly, I couldn't really blame either. I thought there was some really, really that was a penalty type thing.
And that's a few games in a row now where the Jets can be a little frustrated at the inconsistencies in the calls. and we've talked about it before on the show and just ourselves, but we don't play the conspiracy game of they're out to get us.
Yeah.
I don't believe it. It's not a Bettman hates Winnipeg and tells the refs to screw us. It doesn't exist. But that doesn't mean people can't be bad at their job sometimes, right? Like we've all seen it, right? In our own jobs, you've all seen somebody you work with that just kind of sucks at it sometimes. And I feel like the Jets have had to go through that a little bit lately. So yeah, it's a few games in a row where I'd be a little frustrated by some of the calls.
Yeah, no, for sure. I agree there. Tico Napoli points out Chiprikov would add scoring to the fourth line while still being heavy on the forecheck. And that's who I expect to see. Sorry, Leslie's been pretty fired up, so we'll get him to come say hi. That's who I expect to take Iafallo's spot in the lineup as of next year. Like, I kind of expect him to walk for free, clear up that $4 million, which could be reallocated elsewhere.
Yep.
And then a guy like Chibrikov takes that spot for less than $1 million next year. Is kind of how I expect Chibrikov to be incorporated into this team.
Yeah, totally agree with that. Again, barring health, he's had some injury setbacks, right? So as long as he's healthy, I totally agree. He'll fit into that spot perfectly.
And I see Choices TK kind of stresses what I'm thinking when it comes to IFL. Coaches love knowing what to expect from a player, and IFL is the steady pro that you can move up if injuries arise. And I think that's exactly it. Like, you know what you're getting out of Alex Iafallo. Is it a little less than what you hope for at $4 million? 100%.
Yeah.
But you could trust him on the PK. You could trust him out there defensively. He took a shift with Scheifele and Velarde to end, I think it was the first period, second period. It was down at my end to end the defensive zone face-off, which I do kind of find it interesting that Velarde is the one taken off in the D zone with the Scheifele-Connor group, but it's clear Iafallo has trust built up there, and he does that type of stuff really well. I mean, his game's not sexy, but you can trust Alex Iafallo to do his job, and it's to defend. It's to get in there and work hard. It's to do the simple stuff, and it's not sexy at $4 million. I get that, but I do think he is a quality NHL depth player that a playoff team would want around their team.
Yep, absolutely. And if they can make the dollars work, yeah, like you said, he fits that spot so well.
This dog is going nuts. I'm sorry. Yes, he definitely does fit that job really well. Speaking of fitting in the job really well, Gabe Velarde, we've been talking about him starting to come around. I thought today was another example of it on that group. I think he's creating a lot more havoc for the top line higher up in the neutral zone when he's creating turnovers and pressures, and it's helping to allow them to keep more zone time. I mean, Kyle Connor's been really strong on the back checking and catching someone off guard to turn it back the other way, but I do think we're seeing a more active Velarde again on a night like tonight, and I think that's a great sign.
Yeah, the more engaged Velarde is, the better that line seems to produce. And it gives Connor that extra support that he's been able to play off of really well. Yeah, it's kind of interesting that as Gabe Velarde goes, so does that top line. Kind of, it's an interesting dynamic they have at the moment.
Does Kyle Connor immediately start another 10+ game streak? What's your call here?
Oh yeah, I think he's going to be upset that this one ended, and I think he comes out with a 2-point game this next one or something. He's going to score a goal for sure. He's going to be pissed. I love it.
And it's the type of game, like I said, I thought that line was creating chances. I don't think we're going to see them slow down necessarily. I think it was another game where I found Kyle Connor more assertive than passive, and it just makes such a difference for him as a player. So if we keep getting that version, I know Jordan, top line Jay, came to the game with me tonight, and he was commenting on how big of a development he felt it was just seeing this version of Kyle Connor than what we've seen in years past. So, no, that line continues to be not something I'm optimistic about, but they've had a good week and a half here. Let's see where they build off of it. And I could totally see KFC jumping out and getting back onto a streak here, just with how much they created tonight despite not joining the score sheet.
And I think he wants one of the big milestones this year. I think he wants that 50 goal, or you know what I mean? So, yeah, he'll be hungry to come out and start another streak.
Um, and honestly, to his credit, too, on the goal that Velarde scores, I really like how he walks the line with it. His head's up, looking to the net, and he doesn't fire one. And I mean, the Jets are pretty guilty with this as a group. Just firing one late in the power play and hoping it gets through. He
Yep.
holds on to that puck until he finds Shifley get open in the seam, and it creates that whole play. So again, he might not have gotten credit on it in that moment, but I do think his patience leads to how that goal develops. So
Yeah, 100%. You got a
100%.
question in the chat. They
All
said,
right,
"Hey
let's hear
Nick,
it.
how seriously are you about the EP40 stuff? Like, obviously it's not realistic, but do you think a deal around Ehlers or Velarde would be interesting to Vancouver?"
Fascinating stuff here. I don't know if the EP40 stuff happens like in the near future. It's just something I'm starting to like really wonder about. Obviously, where I find the parallels kind of with the Eichel stuff is there was rumors for some time that Eichel and Buffalo wasn't on the same page, and then obviously the surgery comes and it creates that distrust. And I just look at Jim Rutherford's history, and he's had no problem pulling the trigger. I look at the fact that EP40 wasn't even sure he was going to sign there until it became sign with us or you're going to Carolina. And he's had such a slow start. Friedman's talked about how he's someone that gets in his head with the press clippings. I guess some of his buddies send him all the stuff from Twitter and whatnot. And I just wonder about a situation like that in a pressure cooker market like Vancouver, where that market's pretty crazy when it comes to the media and the fan base. And I do say that crazy in a good way. Like they just are all in on the Vancouver Canucks. But I do think it's more like of an off-season type deal when you can kind of get the whole league involved rather than
Yeah,
a
that
trade
feels like a
deadline deal.
draft day deal.
That type of scenario where the cap's a little bit more fluid. So I don't see it as really realistic for Winnipeg in season. But in theory, I do think like a guy like Velarde headlighting something like that would be sexy to both parties. So something to monitor. I mean, if there was one way to get a number one center locked in here,
Oof.
it's that kind of scenario where it's going to come with some question marks. It's going to come with some doubts because of a tough start to the year, and you're going to hear some stuff. But EP40 is a guy that I'm pretty big on. So
Agreed. That's a
and
risk
Tico,
I'm jumping into with both feet if the opportunity ever comes up for it.
you know what would be exciting about EP40? Obviously, I've been a very big critic of the Mark Scheifele and Kyle Connor duo. There's a center I think would get the absolute most
Oh,
out of a Kyle Connor, just looking at
absolutely.
skill sets and stuff like that.
Yep.
But yeah, I do think that is. I do think that's an off-season deal, and it's probably fantasy more than something to really get our hopes up on.
But hey, fantasy, you got to start somewhere. Got to dream big, right?
Yeah, you gotta, and I do think it's a situation worth monitoring, especially. I don't think him as I don't know. We'll see. It's not really the Jets' mantra to swing big like that.
Yeah.
It's not something that's for sure going to happen, but it is something to monitor here. And Max makes a good point, and that's what I find so interesting about the criticism is early on in camp, EP40 came out and admitted he was dealing with an injury. And Max Silence says EP only has one shot over 82 miles an hour so far this season. For a guy that does have a rocket, like even his wrist shot when he's firing is likely hitting that type of number. I do wonder, and when you start to see the local media and the team start to question the player, and the player has already admitted he's injured or was dealing with something early on this year, it starts to creep into that lack of trust stuff. So just something to think about.
Just fun to watch. Oh, we got a call.
We got a call. Let's take the call.
Hey, caller, you're on the landing strip. What's your name? What would you like to talk about?
Hey, Nick, what's up? It is your boy Sills calling in.
Let's go. How's it going tonight, man?
It's going good, man. I wanted to hop in late on this one because, you know what? I got to be honest with you. I've kind of not really been watching any of the games this year. I just got to be honest. I've been out on the Jets, haven't been watching the games, and it's because the last couple of years they've broken my heart. And do you know why this is?
Why is that?
Because I believe that the All-Star break is the curse of the Winnipeg Jets. And I have decided that this year I will not be watching a single game until after the All-Star break because I believe that's when our season begins. And I've been committed to that, and here we are tonight. I'd just like to make that public.
So you didn't even tune in tonight, eh?
No, man, I have not watched a single game this year. Not one.
Just coming to us
they've
for
hurt
the
you so
recap.
bad. Yeah, hey, I love to.
Exactly.
I love to see
I've
you
been
coming to
watching
us for the
boys.
recap.
You guys give me the recap. Exactly. I get the boys recap. I get the vibes here. I get everything going, but I just can't watch the games. My heart's broken. I just can't do it.
All right, well, I'm really hoping that they don't do it to us again the last few years, though.
Okay.
It's always.
I have to hop in here. I'm sorry. I just saw Phyllis said there is no All-Star break this year, and if that is the truth, I don't know what to do, boys. What do I do? Do I have to just not watch the entire year or what?
Hey, if they keep winning like this while you're not watching, I think we're gonna have to crowdfund and make sure you don't watch.
Hey, man, I'm pretty superstitious, so you know what? I can hop on that.
So it's because they're taking the break for the Four Nations face-off. So that'll serve as the unofficial All-Star break.
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see how the winning streak goes. Maybe, if we're still only got one loss by then, maybe I'll just stop watching.
It's all right. You can always come to us for the recaps. We've got you there.
And I will say, I'm as pessimist as they come, but you're missing some fun right now. I gotta say, this run has been it's been pretty fun.
Okay, if Nick is trying to sell me on watching the Winnipeg Jets, I don't really know what to say because this guy is the biggest pessimist of all time. But
we've replaced Nick with an AI version, I think.
Yeah, I was gonna say, what happened to Nick? I don't really know what's going on here.
Hey, we gotta ride this wave, buddy. We gotta ride the good times while they exist.
The chat agrees. If there's no All-Star game, the Jets can't collapse after it, which means they're just gonna keep winning all the way through.
Hey, that's right. No All-Star break, boys. We're gonna go. Maybe 81-1. Let's do it.
Let's do it.
It is still on the table. 13 games in. That's all I'm saying. We're a reasonable way there.
Have a good night.
81-1 is in play.
Thanks, Sil.
All right, have a good night, Sills. Nice to hear from you, man. Hey, and I totally get it. I've had those feelings of, do I want to put myself through this? But you just can't quit this beautiful sport, and we can't quit this Winnipeg Jets team. I see Tikona Pauly is asking about Henry Yarka-Huro as our affordable right-handed top 4D. That sounds like a depth add to me, and I just don't see him replacing any of the three right-handed D is where I'm at there.
So actually, speaking of depth, Zooch40 in the chat says they think there's going to be more of a Colin Miller type depth add only this year at the deadline and not a big defensive addition.
Could see that. I do think it'd be a miss, but I could see that. I saw Jay Pix was hyping up the idea of Anze Kopitar, but they've gotten rather hot over in LA the last week and a bit. That would be a fun one.
Yep, that'll be interesting.
Frosty Winnipeg reminds us that traditionally the slump started at Xmas, which is a fair thing to add when looking at the historics of the Winnipeg Jets.
Yep.
But hey, this team's given us reasons early on to feel like it's different.
Yeah,
they've given us a start that only 5 other fan bases have gotten to see.
Yep.
Let's enjoy this wave until the darkness brings itself in. That's where I'm at. That's basically where I'm at.
And I'm gonna have to agree with Phyllis. The way that they're playing feels different. It feels sustainable. Like they have room to improve while still winning games. That's exactly the position you want to be in. It feels like a good group. We'll see. Like you said, injuries can happen. Anything can happen. Let's see where we are, 20, 40 games, in. But after 13, I've got not a lot of big complaints.
Choices TK points out this year is the year. Go big or go home. No bargain bin shopping. And that's what this start is reaffirming. Honestly, the one thing I've started coming around on, I wouldn't say coming around on, but this would be back-to-back years with such successful potential regular seasons. Talk about a team that's going to earn the big swing from the organization. I just wonder if it's going to come. Tikona Pauly asks if I'm concerned about injuries at the Four Nations Cup. I mean, I think you're probably always thinking about injuries in any of those specialty tournaments.
Yep.
Though I'm honestly just really excited for the Four Nations Cup and to finally
Yeah.
see some best on best in the
Me too.
sport. So I come at it kind of conflicted. Obviously, don't want to see Connor Hellebuck get hurt there, and that would be the type of thing that just ruined the tournament for me.
That's season ending, yeah.
But as a hockey fan, I'm just excited to see what that tournament looks like.
Agreed. You got a
So, Mikey.
question, Mr. Campen Canadian in the chat. Welcome in. Has a question. What about Kadri for 2C? Move AI, I follow, and bring in Kadri and Uyghur. Jets would have to give up a lot, but it should be win now with the team they have.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I love it. Why not? If you're going to go for it, we know the end of those contracts are going to be tough. Go for it now. Sure, I'm in. I'm in.
Agreed.
And then let's touch on Sill's question here, and then let's dive into the 3 stars and get out of here, Mikey. How does that sound? So Sills asks, how do you feel about shaking up the vibes by adding a new guy to the mix? I'm not sure if you want to do that late or get them in early and acclimated. That is a really good question. It's something I've wondered more and more about when it comes to deadline ads and the short time period to get both up to date with the system and get integrated into the room. I think when it comes to ads like that, I think you actually get an overwhelming sense of happiness and excitement out of the room. So I don't worry about that side of it more to speak.
Yep.
Because at the end of the day, all these guys do know it's a business. They all want to win a cup, even if it means one of their buddies might get stiffed a little bit here, right? So I don't necessarily worry about that side of it. I do wonder about getting a guy in and acclimated. And because of that, I do like to go a little bit earlier, like a January or February, kind of like with Monahan last year, right? You got him in about a month out from the deadline, got to get to see how he fit in. And if that's not a fit, obviously you can kind of readjust your plan from there, though we don't really see NHL teams do that, so to speak.
Yeah.
Or you go into that deadline knowing, hey, I still need this, even though I acquired this. So I like going early, personally. What do you think?
Yeah, I agree. I like to, if they can get those trades done a little bit earlier, it's always better to give them more time to gel. And I think a lot goes into when you're targeting the players to bring in the type of player you're bringing in, and if that's going to fit within not only the positions on the ice, but the positions in the locker room. And we've seen the Jets specifically bring players in to try to help stabilize the locker room before. So we know as an organization, they do value, that level of relationship. So yeah, the earlier the better always, just so that they can get used to the play on the ice and the group. But they'll, I have faith that the guys that they do bring in will gel wherever that falls in the calendar.
No, hey, hard to disagree with you. So let's dive into the 3 stars of the night. Who do you got in this one?
Nothing fancy and flashy because this game was pretty clean. 3rd star, Connor Hellebuck, 2nd shutout of the year. 2nd star, even though he didn't get on the box score and he broke his streak, I had his Kyle Connor. I just thought his overall play again tonight was really good. He set up Iafallo really nice, or not Iafallo, sorry, Gabe Velarde. And Mark Scheifele for a few chances. So I had Connor at number 2. And number 1 star, 900 games, 2 goals. Nino Niederreiter. He was phenomenal tonight. He was number 1 for me. How about you? What you got?
So I don't want the goalie union to get mad at me. So I'm going to give Connor Hellebuck the 3rd star for the shutout, obviously. Got the win, got the shutout. Perfect night for Connor Hellebuck. I'm going to go to Josh Morrissey as the 2nd star. Just felt like it was another one of those nights where, yeah, he didn't get on the board outside the first assist there with the clap bomb, but it just felt like another game where Josh Morrissey really controlled how the game was processed. And it just, for me, I enjoy watching a D-man that can control a game quite like Josh Morrissey can.
Yep.
And then I'm gonna go. Obviously, Nino Niederreiter plays his 900th game, gets the 2 goals in the third period. Let's give it to El Nino there for the 3 stars. I'm going to give an honorary mention to Ticona Pauly's suggestions of Turd number 1, Phyllis number 2, and Scott number 3. Shout out to the chat for their efforts on this one. But yeah, I'll go Helly 3, Morrissey 2, Nino, and we're going to go out on that one. Be sure to check out our next show coming on, what is it, Thursday would be the next one? Colorado.
Thursday's the next game, yep.
Thursday night versus Colorado. Keep in mind, we're also looking to give a listener a pair of tickets to the Florida game at the end of the month with Pimo coming back to town, so make sure you're checking in to see how you can win that. And we'll be back with the weekly show next Monday. The cast at Top Line was a little banged up and sick the last few days, so we'll get back to that next Monday. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for listening and being a part of that. Let's see where this goes. The 12-1-1 or 12-1-0 Winnipeg Jets become the sixth team in history to accomplish such a feat. I'm having a hell of a time talking with all of you about it, and we're looking forward to see where this story gets written. You have a good rest of your night.
Good night, everybody.